Today, we will be going over Chapter 1, Section 1 notes for government. These are the objectives that we will go over for Section 1. These are also some definitions to keywords in Section 1. This is the focus question for today. What is the government and what is government and what is its purpose? So the answer you should have gotten on that focus question would have been something along the lines of this. In class, it will look different because I will take student suggestions and write those on the board. For the basic types of government, there are a couple. One basic type of government is a dictatorship. In a dictatorship, all powers are held by one person or one group. This is what you should write down on your paper. In a democracy, authority lies with the people. That's the second note you should write on your paper. The heading of this section on your paper should say Basic Types of Government. And you can also write Chapter 1, Section 1. Here, this explains that the U.S. government gives executive power to the president, legislative power to Congress, and the judicial power to the Supreme Court. So what you need to know here is that the U.S. government, executive power is the president, legislative power is Congress, judicial power is the Supreme Court. This is what you will need to write in your notes. So next is, what is the state? So your heading, again, is going to be the state. Okay, and your bullet will be states are the main unit of government in the world today. You don't have to write that there are more than 200 states. You do not need to write the second one. A state is not strictly the same thing as a nation. You can read over the notes you do not have to write down, but they are not necessary for the chapter. You do need to know this part, though. Every state has 4 basic characteristics: population, territory, sovereignty, and a government. These are the things that all states have in common. If they do not have these 4 basic characteristics, then it is not considered a state. Population and territory. We're going to talk about those first. So this is continuing from the previous slide. Every state has a population, whether large or small, diverse or homogeneous. China, to the right, here in this picture, has a large population that is reflected in its landscape. So every state has a population, whether large or small. a state must have territory, which is land that is known and recognized. Those are the notes that you need to take. The other two characteristics are sovereignty and government. So what you need to know here is that every state has sovereignty. What is sovereignty? It's the absolute power within its own territory to decide domestic and foreign policies. You'll need to write that in your notes. The last thing that a state must have is a government. So each state has a government, which is a political organization to make and enforce policies. So you'll need to know that there are origins of the states. There are many theories that have been developed to explain the origins of these states. So what you need to know are the four types of theories that explain the origins of the state. So explain the origins of the state. They are the force theory, the evolutionary theory, the divine right theory, and the social contract theory. You'll need to write those four down. We will define them in just a minute. So the first one is the force theory. So beside where you wrote force theory, you need to write that the force theory holds an individual or group claims control over a territory and forces the population to submit. So when a group of people already live somewhere and another individual or group claims control and forces them to submit to their rules and their laws, that is called the force theory. The state then becomes sovereign, and those in control form the government. An example of that would be when the colonizers came to the United States and forced out the Native Americans. Next, that you need to write beside evolutionary theory that you wrote previously is that the evolutionary theory says that a population formed out of primitive families. The heads of these families became the government. When these families settled in one territory and claimed it as their own, they became a sovereign state. Where you wrote divine right theory, you will need to define it. Beside that, the divine right theory holds that God created the state, making it sovereign. You'll also need to know that the government is made up of those chosen by God to rule. The population must obey their ruler. That's like when you have a king or queen, like a monarchy. They're chosen by God. That's what they believe. Next is the social contract theory. What is the social contract theory? The social contract theory was developed by philosophers, and it lists a bunch of names. And it has had what you need to know about the social contract theory. That should be, you're going to write that. And then what you need to write beside that is that it had the greatest influence on the United States government. What is the definition? It holds, so this theory holds that the people chose to give the state enough power to promote the well-being of everyone. That's what you need to write there. You also need to write that all political power comes from the will of the people. So the social contract theory holds that the people can withhold power from an unjust government. That is important to know. That is in the United States Constitution. So it says that the people can withhold power from an unjust government. So now here's a picture of a political cartoon. And it says what types of government might restrict people from having it as good as this. So if you read through that, can you stand the thought of future generations having it as good as this? No. Good. Let's form a government. So having it as good as this, how could that restrict people from having it as good as this? That's a question to think about. So your focus question also talked about the purpose of government. So what is the purpose of government? The preamble to the U.S. Constitution sets forth the basic purposes of America's government. So what you need to know is that the preamble to the U.S. Constitution sets forth the basic purposes of America's government. What are they? The first one, it forms a more perfect union. What you need to write is that it's uniting the state governments and the American people. Next, you need to know that it establishes justice by attempting to create and administer laws in a fair, reasonable, and impartial fashion. The last two. The government offers domestic tranquility. So the government offers, you don't have to know domestic tranquility, but you need to write it. Government offers peace at home by providing law and order. The government provides for the nation's defense by maintaining armed forces. You'll need to write that. What else does it do? It promotes the general welfare of citizens by providing services, and it gives you some examples, public education, that benefit all or most people. The government helps secure the blessings of liberty, so the government guarantees many individual rights and liberties. Like